SRN News, I'm Val Dior. The Supreme Court has punted on a couple of big gerrymandering cases.
A pair of closely watched cases in Wisconsin and Maryland where the parties out of power had alleged that redrawn districts are so partisan they violate the Constitution. The High Court sending the Wisconsin case back to a lower court for more arguments and refusing to issue an injunction in Maryland that would have prevented the use of the new district. In both cases, the justices avoided the hard question of whether extreme gerrymandering is okay.
Washington correspondent Wally Hines reporting. President Trump meets with House Republicans this week to talk immigration. There are two separate immigration bills due for a vote in the House. Meanwhile, a couple of first ladies are voicing their opinions on policy that has seen children separated from their parents when their parents are arrested.
First Lady Melania Trump said through her spokeswoman that we need to be a country that follows all laws, but also one that governs with heart. Former First Lady Laura Bush called the policy cruel and immoral. GOP Senator Susan Collins expressed concern about it, and former advisor to President Trump, Anthony Scaramucci, says he thinks the issue's going to hurt the president at some point. Shirley Smith, Washington.
Well, both parties can't seem to agree on who is responsible. However, brand new facilities were built a few years ago in quiet locations in the U.S. near the border with taxpayer money to house immigrants that cross illegally. A strong earthquake has knocked over walls and set off scattered fires around metropolitan Osaka in western Japan, killing at least 3 people, injuring hundreds. Dozens of flights grounded, trains were halted, and power knocked out for many people. And on Wall Street, the Dow down 168, NASDAQ down 15, the S&P down 11. You're listening to SRN News. North Korea remains the toughest place on earth to follow Christ.
25% of all Christians in North Korea are in a prison camp. 70,000 of them.
Vernon Brewer is CEO of World Help.
Many of them die within the first 3 years, so it's a 15-year sentence for most of them for being caught with the Bible, but actually it's a death sentence.
He's hopeful that President Trump's efforts to secure a peace deal with Kim Jong-un will ultimately benefit persecuted Christians. Fresh out of prison, former Connecticut Governor John Rowland now working as a fundraiser for a Christian group that helps convicts successfully return to their communities. He began working for Prison Fellowship this month. The 61-year-old Republican was released May 25th, a year early from his 30-month sentence for conspiring to hide political consulting roles in 2 failed congressional campaigns. This is SRN News. The New York governor's race is heating up, although if you can believe the polls, it may not be much of a contest.
A former top official in the New York Democratic Party is launching an independent run for governor. Former Syracuse Mayor Stephanie Miner tweets that she is running as a citizen of New York. Polls show incumbent Governor Andrew Cuomo with comfortable leads over actress Cynthia Nixon heading into the Democratic primary and Republican Dutchess County Executive Marcus Molinaro in a general election matchup. Rich Thomason reporting.
The World Health Organization says some obsessive video gamers may actually have an addiction. It's the latest revision to a disease classification manual. The UN Health Agency says that compulsively playing video games now qualifies as a mental health condition called gaming disorder, who is hoping that it will help government, families, and healthcare workers deal with gamers. This is SRN News.
This ridiculous fiction about Trump taking children away from their parents for no good reason at all and putting them in cages, I guess I should talk about that, but I'm not. Something's bothering me even more. The fans at the U.S. Open up there in the Hamptons, Long Island, New York. What jerks. All the way through this tournament, you had to endure these fools yelling, "Dilly dilly, mashed potato," and, of course, the ever-popular, "Get in the hole." That's for people with a more vivid imagination. Let me tell you what's going on. We'll take Mr. Idiot Dilly Dilly Man, for instance. You see, he calls up his wife or his girlfriend or his boyfriend. Then he calls a bunch of friends. He says, "Hey, guys, I'm at the U.S. Open, and I'm standing right here by a microphone on the 8th tee. So be watching. And when Ricky Fowler hits that ball on the 8th tee, I'm going to yell, dilly dilly. And then you'll be able to sit home and you'll hear that and you say, oh man, that was old Jerome. Oh, isn't he cool? Isn't he cool? Yeah, that all your friends will be thinking how cool and bold and daring you are. And they heard your voice on the TV yelling, dilly dilly. So there's a high point of your life. I don't know why they tolerate all of this on golf broadcast. Maybe they don't want to discourage younger listeners who are so enthralled, impressed, thrilled by dilly dilly or get in the hole. It would be nice. Just one time, it would be nice to see a security guy standing next to somebody who yells, mashed potatoes, grabbing them and putting them on the ground. Just once, please. Solomon Brothers Studios, Naples. This is Neal Boortz.
Support for this podcast and the following messages comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, proud to support the many Texas businesses who make safety their number one priority in the workplace. More information about safety-focused workers' comp available at WorksafeTexas.com.
Immigration outrage. I'm Ed Donahue with an AP News Minute.
This is a complex and emotionally charged issue. It will take courage and cleared-eyed solutions to address.
Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen told a sheriff's group in New Orleans there has been some misinformation about how families are being treated who have been detained at the U.S. border with Mexico.
We are doing none of those things. We are enforcing the laws passed by Congress, and we are doing all that we can in the executive branch to protect our communities.
And Attorney General Jeff Sessions says the children are being used to get into the country.
These children are not entering at ports of entry, but in dangerous places, in deserts, and crossing our fences and attempting to escape law enforcement officers.
Nielsen says past administrations asked immigration agents to look the other way when families cross the border illegally, but no longer. A powerful earthquake hit the area around Osaka, Japan, the country's second largest city. At least 4 people are dead. I'm Ed Donahue.
Hey, Steve Harvey here for the Illinois Broadcasters Association. And in a recent survey, the Illinois Emergency Management Agency was asked to name the top 5 items that every Illinois family needs to have in their home's emergency disaster kit. Check out these answers. Water, can't live without it. Number 2, non-perishable food. Well, after all, a man gotta eat, right? Number 3, weather radio, and make sure you got fresh batteries too. Number 4, flashlight. Even more reason to have fresh batteries on hand. Number 5, first aid kit. Look, there's no reason to feud over what items to put in your family's emergency disaster kit. Get the answers and more at ready.illinois.gov. That's ready.illinois.gov.
Sponsored by the Illinois Emergency Management Agency, aired in cooperation with the Illinois Broadcasters Association and this station.
Radio. It's nothing new. It's been here all along, with free entertainment, news, sports, music, and information. It's not just part of life, it's part of who we are. You know which station is going to tell you the score of the game, which one's going to give you a laugh in the morning, which one is going to give you something to sing along with. You know where to turn when the weather gets rough. When something big happens, good or bad, you know where to go because radio has been here all along. Radio is part of your community, woven into the fabric of what makes home, home. And now, radio has evolved to move with you with the Next Radio app and your FM-enabled phone. Just plug in your headphones to start experiencing radio in a whole new way while using way less battery and data than streaming apps. Check out the live guide to see and interact with live radio stations. Easily find your favorites like the one you're listening to right now. And as always, it's totally free. Download the Next Radio app today. Next Radio. Live and local wherever you go.
Drawing a line on immigration, I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News. Attorney General Jeff Sessions speaking a short time ago about families being separated at the southern border.
We do not want to separate children from their parents.
But he says there's been a 5-fold increase in immigrants trying to cross illegally with children in the last 4 years because of an Obama-era immunity loophole. He's at a conference in New Orleans along with other top officials. Fox's John Decker live at the White House.
Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen defending the administration policy of separating children from their parents at the U.S.-Mexico border.
It is the beginning of the unraveling of democracy when the body who makes the laws, rather than changing them, asks the body who enforces the laws not to enforce the laws.
Democrats have blasted the president for the zero-tolerance policy. The president tweeting earlier, it's the Democrats' fault for being weak and ineffective with border security and crime. Change the laws, he wrote. Lisa?
Thanks, John. Democrats say the change in enforcement policy that started in May should be reversed while Congress works on immigration reform. The nation's highest court stays out of the latest fight over political maps. Fox's Jared Halpern, live in D.C.
Legislative maps in Maryland and Wisconsin can stand for now. The Supreme Court's sending both gerrymandering challenges back to lower courts. In the Wisconsin case, a group of Democrats argue partisan redistricting dilutes their votes. The Supreme Court unanimously ruled those voters cannot sue on a statewide level. They must instead challenge district by district. A separate challenge from Maryland Republicans challenging a single congressional district was also denied. Neither opinion answered broad questions about how far state lawmakers can go in giving one party an advantage with electoral maps. Lisa.
Thanks, Jared. Wall Street right now, the Dow is down 164 points. Fox News, fair and balanced. The U.S. ramps up airstrikes in Afghanistan.
A new strike report says U.S. jets have dropped more bombs through the first 5 months of this year in Afghanistan than all 2015 and 2016 combined. Air Force Central Command says nearly 600 airstrikes took place last month. That's 80% more than May 2017. All this comes as the Taliban rejected an offer from the Afghan government to extend a ceasefire agreement, following the three-day Eid celebrations marking the end of Islam's holy month of Ramadan. At the Pentagon, Lucas Tomlinson, Fox News.
Just getting word that a former Israeli lawmaker is accused of spying for Iran. Gonan Segev, a doctor who served as Israel's energy and infrastructure minister in the early 1990s, was previously jailed for 5 years on drug smuggling charges. Now he's accused of passing information to Iranian intelligence, assisting them in activity against Israel through an alliance that began in 2012. His lawyers dispute the allegations. Years later, the fallout continues from a Volkswagen scandal as the head of a car maker under the VW umbrella is arrested.
Audi says its CEO, Rupert Stadler, was detained by German authorities this morning and that a judge has ordered he be kept in custody pending possible charges. Prosecutors say he's been taken in because they were concerned he might hinder the ongoing investigation into Audi's parent company, Volkswagen, still under scrutiny for the 2015 scandal in which it was caught cheating on emissions tests. Stadler is the most senior Volkswagen executive to be detained so far. Audi says the presumption of innocence continues to apply. In London, Simon Owen, Fox News.
Again, a sell-off on Wall Street, the Dow back under 25K, and part over the ongoing trade tensions rattling global markets. Oil prices slightly higher, back over $65 a barrel. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News Radio.
There are a ton of social networking websites, but one stands apart for a very special reason. This one saves lives. It's MatchingDonors.com. MatchingDonors.com links organ donors with people in need of kidney and other transplants. In the U.S., 22 people die each day waiting for an organ transplant, most of them for kidneys. If you've ever considered becoming a living organ donor, or if you're someone in need of an organ transplant, visit MatchingDonors.com, home of the greatest gift of all, the gift of life. MatchingDonors.com.
In an emergency, radio can be your lifeline. When the power is out and cellular networks are down, Next Radio is the free FM radio app that still works on your Android smartphone. Download Next Radio now at the Google Play Store. Stay tuned to this station and stay safe.
Welcome to the Newsworthy. All the day's news in less than 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. Thank you so much for listening. Today, immigration controversy. The fight over separated families at the border gets even more intense. Plus, a World Cup upset, Facebook's eye-opener, and a record breaker at the box office. All that and much more in less than 10 minutes. I'm Erica Mandy. Today is Monday, June 18th. You ready? Let's do this. Expect a lot of talk this week about immigration, specifically the issue of families separated at the U.S.-Mexico border. Lawmakers are considering two measures this week to deal with the issue. The Wall Street Journal says both measures would allow children to be detained with their parents when they cross the border illegally. Critics say that's not a good solution either. But right now, many families are being separated, and it's causing public outrage. So first, why is it happening? Well, the law is that migrant children can't be put in jail with their parents. So in the past, a lot of parents who cross the border illegally with their kids would typically be let go and told to come back for their court date at a later time. But the Trump administration's new zero-tolerance policy means not letting them go, that instead those crossing the border should be detained and criminally prosecuted. But since the kids can't be put in jail, the families are getting separated. The parents detained, the kids sent to government shelters, where there's various reports and opinions about whether or not the conditions are actually humane. Fox News reports the head of the Department of Homeland Security says families should seek asylum at a port of entry where it's legal instead of trying to cross illegally. The Attorney General has said the zero-tolerance policy is meant to be a deterrent for crossing illegally. President Trump is blaming Democrats, saying it's their law and he's just enforcing it. But the New York Times says there's no law that requires this to happen. And outspoken critics include some lawmakers, advocacy groups, some religious leaders, and celebrities. They say separating kids from parents is traumatizing, immoral, and inhumane. Nearly 2,000 children have reportedly been separated from their parents at the U.S.-Mexico border in 6 weeks. Of course, there's a lot more to this issue, and we'll be hearing a lot more about it this week. The governor of New Jersey is saying a gang fight may have been what turned into a mass shooting over the weekend. CNN reports 22 people were hurt, including a teenager. Rival gang members were reportedly shooting at each other, but it was at a popular all-night arts festival in Trenton, New Jersey, which means thousands of other people were around at the time. The suspected gunman is now dead, likely killed by police. A strong earthquake hit western Japan early this morning, affecting Japan's second largest metro area of Osaka. It was a magnitude 6.1 quake. Reuters reports that more than 200 people were hurt. All right, other things people may be talking about today. The World Cup and the biggest upset so far. Germany lost to Mexico. It means the defending World Cup champ, Germany, lost its opening match. Mexico's fans were so excited, though, that seismologists actually picked up a small artificial earthquake in Mexico City, apparently caused by so many people jumping up and down. For the first time since the 1980s, the same guy won the U.S. Open 2 years in a row. It was Brooks Koepka who pulled off the back-to-back wins. The U.S. Open is, of course, one of the major golf championships. And a past U.S. Women's Open champ also won big this weekend. So Yun Yu won the Meyer LPGA Classic. What about the Blobfish Basketball Classic? Well, that's at least the name late-night TV host Jimmy Kimmel gave it. It was a one-on-one basketball game between Kimmel and Texas Senator Ted Cruz. It was all for charity. The AP says the game was born out of a joke on Kimmel's show when he said the senator resembled a blobfish. Well, Senator Cruz challenged him to a one-on-one basketball game. The two don't tend to agree on public policy. Well, Senator Cruz won the charity basketball game 11-9. They both agreed to cut the game short when it didn't seem either one would actually be able to reach 15 points anytime soon. Game highlights and self-deprecating jokes are expected on Jimmy Kimmel Live tonight. Microsoft is trying to help more stores go cashier-free, as in no checkout lines. Reuters cites sources saying Microsoft's artificial intelligence team is on it, trying to come up with systems that track what shoppers add to their carts. The goal? Help more retailers keep up with Amazon. Because yes, Amazon is already doing it. Remember, Amazon launched its cashier-free store, Amazon Go, back in January. At this point, Microsoft is not officially commenting. Facebook is working on software that will open your eyes. Literally, it'll open your eyes, in pictures at least. TechCrunch reports Facebook is working on an AI system that is trained to recognize open eyes in pictures and then be able to replicate that in other pictures when your eyes are closed. Some say it'll be kind of creepy. Others say group pictures will be better off forever. The movie Incredibles 2 had a record-breaking opening weekend. Variety says the Disney Pixar movie brought in $180 million. That's the best debut for any animated movie ever. And it was the 8th biggest opening in the U.S. of all time. And get this, so far in 2018, the top 3 biggest movie openings of the year all belong to Disney. Black Panther, Avengers Infinity War, and Incredibles 2. The MTV Movie and TV Awards are on tonight. It was actually already taped on Saturday, so you may already see stories about the red carpet fashion, but the ceremony itself will actually air tonight. Tiffany Haddish is hosting, and of course there will be other big-name presenters. Us Weekly says Stranger Things and Black Panther are leading the way with the most nominations. It starts at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on MTV. A surprise album from a superstar power couple. Beyoncé and Jay-Z released an unexpected album on Saturday called Everything Is Love. They've definitely collaborated before, but this is the first joint album from the married couple. It premiered on the music streaming service Tidal, which is owned in part by Jay-Z. Muslims around the world celebrated Eid al-Fitr on Friday. It marks the end of the holy month of Ramadan. That's the month when those observing don't eat or drink anything from sunrise to sunset. Eid is considered one of the most festive times with lots of food and family. And that's it. You are all caught up. Before you go, I have to say a big thank you to those of you who left messages on the new call-in line, which I announced just on Friday. It was so wonderful to hear directly from you, to actually get to hear your voice for a change. Here are a few clips.
It is a lifesaver for me.
Fair and objective.
Super uplifting and fun.
It's exactly as much news as I want to get.
Get me all caught up without having to hear people arguing.
It gets in all the pertinent information I need in less than 10 minutes. It's amazing.
So thank you again to all the callers, and I'm going to keep sharing messages every now and then. So I want to hear from you. If you have a comment or a news question or topic that you want us to talk about on a Thursday interview segment, please do call in and let me know. The number is 812-785-NEWS. That's 812-785-NEWS. I can't wait to hear from you. Of course, if you just want to read more about any of the news stories we talked about today, check out today's show notes. You can find them at thenewsworthy.com, click episodes, and then find today's date. The Newsworthy is ready for you to listen every weekday by 4 in the morning Eastern Time. So we'll chat again tomorrow. Have a great day.
The game doesn't stop.
Neither should you.
Wherever you go, the game goes too using the enabled FM chip in your phone and the Next Radio app.
The Next Radio app brings real FM radio to your phone.
Just plug in your headphones and listen to the Next Radio app, and you'll save major data and battery life compared to streaming apps. And there are no blackouts, so you never miss the games you love played on your local FM radio station. Download the Next Radio app to enhance your radio listening experience. And keep going. With no blackouts and restrictions, the game follows you. Your favorite team, host, and commentator go with you.
The best thing is, it's all totally free. No subscriptions, no fees. Get off the sidelines and download the Next Radio app today, free.
Next Radio, live and local, wherever you go.
Today we decided to walk to school. The light counted. 15, 14,
41, 31, 13.
We took a left on Carroll Street. Danny's smart, but he gets distracted. I realized he forgot his homework. I hope he doesn't have another bad day at school.
When you can see learning and attention issues from their side, you can be on their side. That's why there's Understood.org, a free resource for the parents of the 1 in 5 kids with learning and attention issues. Go from misunderstanding to Understood.org. Brought to you by Understood and the Ad Council.
They were outnumbered.
Ready.
Out-equipped. They had no chance of winning. But they had one huge advantage. General George Washington.
The fate of unborn millions will now depend, under God, on the courage and conduct of this army. We have to resolve to conquer or die.
Just as the leadership of one man helped form a nation, today leadership can transform the world. Leadership is in you. Now pass it on from passiton.com.
From CBC News, it's The World This Hour. I'm Joe Cummings. Ali Omar Adder has been given a 15-year prison sentence for his role in the abduction of Canadian journalist Amanda Lindhout. Lindhout was abducted in southern Somalia in 2008, and Adder acted as a negotiator for the hostage takers. Lindhout was released after being held for a year. The RCMP arrested Adder in Ottawa 3 years ago. He had been lured to Canada under the false pretext of a book deal. The United Nations human rights chief has joined the mounting opposition to the Trump administration's immigration policy. Under the White House directive, adults who entered the United States illegally must be criminally prosecuted. As a result, nearly 2,000 children have been separated from their families. Here's the UN's Zayed Riyad Al-Alasan.
The American Association of Pediatrics has called this cruel practice government-sanctioned child abuse. The thought that any state would seek to deter parents by inflicting such abuse on children is unconscionable.
However, the Trump administration is not backing down. Attorney General Jeff Sessions is insisting the policy actually protects children.
These children are not entering at ports of entry, but in dangerous places, in deserts and crossing our fences. We do not want to separate children from their parents. We do not want adults to bring children into this country unlawfully either, placing those children at risk.
Sessions goes on to say if Congress votes to build a border wall and close loopholes in immigration legislation, families won't attempt to cross illegally into the United States. As mentioned, since April, American authorities have taken 2,000 children from their parents. It's being suggested the Trump administration's new tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum could be a significant factor in today's federal by-election in Quebec. That and a star candidate running for the Conservatives may prove difficult for the Liberals to overcome. Here's Nick Gamache.
Quebec will be a battleground in next year's federal election. After the orange wave in 2011, the Liberal breakthrough in 2015, and the ongoing struggles of the Bloc Québécois, things are very fluid in the province and all parties want to capitalize. Not to mention that Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord is on the front lines of the uncertainty created by the tariffs dispute with the United States because the aluminum sector is such a big player in the region. The Liberals held the seat up until Denis Lemieux stepped down. They want to clearly establish their base and their ground game in Quebec, but the Conservatives have a well-known candidate running in Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord, former junior hockey coach Richard Martel. The party has been targeting Quebec. The riding is in that blue triangle around Quebec City where the Conservatives have had success over the past decade. And for the NDP and the Bloc Québécois, two parties trying to find their footing at the moment. We'll find out just how much work they have ahead of them in Quebec before the next election. Nick Gamache, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Federal Ethics Commissioner says Finance Minister Bill Morneau did not violate conflict of interest laws in sponsoring a pension bill last year. It was alleged Morneau's family company would benefit from the Trudeau government's pension reform legislation. However, the commissioner has determined today that Morneau's stake in the company and those of his relatives don't fall into the scope of the law.
Your forces are under attack.
The World Health Organization today is officially recognizing addiction to electronic games as a mental health condition. Gaming disorder appears today in a new draft of the WHO's International Classification of Diseases. It says a player can be deemed addicted when gaming interferes with social behavior, family relationships, work, or school. Israel has charged a former cabinet minister with espionage. Gonen Segev is being accused of supplying Iran with information on Israeli military officials and the country's energy industry. Segev has previously served time in jail for drug smuggling. He's been working as late as a doctor in Nigeria and was arrested by Israeli police when he attempted to re-enter the country. And that is The World This Hour. I'm Joe Cummings.
Let's check Ag News on the RFD Radio Network. I'm DeLoss Yonke. How are farmers dealing with the hot weather, especially heat and humidity we've dealt with for the last 3 or 4 days? Ron Moore is a Farm Week crop watcher in Warren County, and it's been dry there for quite some time.
Corn is kind of curling, has since the beginning of June. We're a little short on rainfall right now. But, generally we look pretty good, but we could certainly use an inch of rain.
Moore says the clouds come to the Mississippi River and then split. Some goes south and some goes north. Plenty actually went north last week, he says.
We came home from Chicago this week, and on Route 88 there were lots and lots of fields with water standing in it. So we feel for those folks that did a good job of getting their crop planted on time, and then Mother Nature kind of whittles away at their yield potential.
It's Ron Moore in Warren County. He is a Farm Week crop watcher. You can read his and all the reports from our crop watchers in each week's edition of Farm Week. The Energy Information Association forecasts Brent crude oil prices to average $71 a barrel this year and $68 a barrel next year. The 2019 forecast price is a $2 per barrel increase than what was forecasted in May, reflecting global oil markets balances that the administration expects to be tighter than previously forecast because of lower expected production growth from both OPEC and the United States. Farm bill at some point is expected to be on the front burner, at least in the U.S. House of Representatives. Plenty to negotiate to get there, though, says Bloomberg's ag writer Alan Bierga.
June 22nd is the deadline that's been given for putting a revote on the House Farm Bill with no revisions. How that happens and what happens are very much up in the air. It failed in the House last month, and part of that was because of the seemingly unrelated debate over immigration. Well, this debate is still going on, and whether or not there's a Farm Bill vote depends on whether or not Congress can figure something out on that issue. If an immigration vote does take place, now the question is there a Farm Bill vote, and how does it turn out? The House Agriculture Committee Chair, Michael Conaway, says he's been contacting members who voted against it last time and basically trying to answer the question that's been dogging the Farm Bill ever since it failed in that vote. Was the failure about immigration, like everyone says, or was it really about the Farm Bill?
That's Alan Bierga at Bloomberg. The first go-around, the House Farm Bill only received 198 votes in favor, and 30 Republicans voted against it. It was considered to be partisan legislation. DeLoss Yonke, RFD Radio Network.
Here's a commodity market update on the RFD Radio Network. I'm Rita Frazier. We're still trading lower in the corn and wheat, but we are trending a bit higher now in the soybeans. Let's start there with July soybeans. We're now up 3,908 and a half. August up 2 1/4, 913 3/4. November soybeans up 1/4, 930 3/4. July corn this hour down 3 3/4, 357 and a half. September down 4. December down 4 1/4 at 378 and a half. July wheat Chicago down 7 3/4, 491 3/4. September down 9 and a half, 504. Soybean meal for August down 8 cents at 340.10, and soybean oil up 4 at 29.54. Outside markets, July crude oil up 8 at 65.14. This is Inside Agriculture on the RFD Radio Network. I'm Rita Frazier. Some Illinois farmers have been putting in some long hours, bringing in the first cutting of this year's hay crop. Maria Cox raises about 800 acres of hay in Greene County and recently talked to Mike Orso about what she's seen and heard about replenishing those hay supplies.
I think, a couple of us on the farm, we were putting in, one of our guys had 96 hours one week, and we've been putting in some long hours, and it's with the hay, it's usually, I'm not getting home till probably 9:30 at night. Our bale numbers are a little bit better than usual, but our hay is irrigated, so that's why we are having a good crop. But what I've seen is that people who are mowing roadsides, seems like their roadsides and other pastures, their crop isn't that good this year.
The cold, wet spring held back growth of many pastures, she says. Some cattle producers had to feed hay longer than originally planned. Cox says hay supplies nationwide are down by about 1/3 from a year ago.
I could have sold out everything in probably November of last year, but I just kind of held on to some for my current customers. And we usually run out of hay in about April, and we ran out in February of this year. And I think that shortage is real. It's just not in the news because a lot of the customers that we take hay to in the summer, and they're booking more loads than usual at this time of year. And I'd say every hay customer I've talked to carried 0 bales over from last year.
The West Central Illinois farmer says she wants to convert selling her hay by the ton rather than by the bale. She says the size of bales can vary, and Cox believes pricing hay by the ton is the fairest to both hay buyers and sellers.
When severe weather strikes, it's important you're in the know. Even if power goes out and cellular networks are down, radio can be your lifeline. And Next Radio is the free app that brings FM radio right to your Android smartphone. No data or cellular network required, and it won't drain your battery. Go to the Google Play Store right now. Download the Next Radio app to your Android device. Stay tuned to this station, and please stay safe. For a full list of compatible devices, visit nextradioapp.com.
Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise.
And all was Benjamin Franklin wise. So you actually think electricity can pass through metal? Ha! Ben Franklin, go fly a kite.
Excellent idea. Where are my keys?
Besides the bifocals, Ben invented the Franklin stove, the odometer, and the lightning rod. Ingenuity, pass it on. From the Foundation for a Better Life at values.com.
This is Betty White. I know you don't need one more thing to worry about, but listen, high blood pressure can cause kidney damage, blindness, heart attack, stroke, and you can have high blood pressure even if you feel all right. 1 in 7 adults has it, but it's easy to get your blood pressure checked, and you can treat it if it is too high. So don't worry about it, don't ignore it, just see your doctor and check it out.
For your free booklet, visit the Will Rogers Institute at wrinstitute.org and find us on Facebook and Twitter.
Your NBC Sports Radio update starts now.
Houston has no problems. I'm Jeff Biggs, and what a big run for the defending World Series champion Houston Astros. They wrapped up a perfect 10-0 road trip in Kansas City with their 11th win in a row. That's one shy of the franchise record. And tonight, A.J. Hinch and the Stros are back home at Minute Park to take on the Rays.
This was incredible, just by the way we played and the way we completed games. Obviously, winning every game is incredible. We did it in a lot of different ways, and so we want to keep the same intent and the same mentality that we've been playing with. So it's been pretty remarkable. It's hard to put into words. You know, it's been somebody different every night. We've had good pitching. We've played good defense. We've rallied late. We've blown guys out early. So it's we're in a good place right now, but we've got to continue to do that going home. It was a long trip.
And Garrett Cole will take the mound tonight, looking to improve to 9-1. Also tonight, the Yankees and the Nationals will go at it in the Bronx. It's an NLCS rematch at Wrigley. The Cubs will host the Dodgers, and the first-place Brewers are in Pittsburgh, where Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger spoke again over the weekend and says he's not concerned with his contract status.
To me, it's about going out and playing now and winning now. I think there's a lot more maybe important people or whatever people that need to get their deals done now. So for me to do it 2 years out, if it doesn't make sense to the team, then I'm not going to sit there and worry about it. As a quarterback of this team, is sometimes you always have to just leave a little bit of money behind for other guys. But that's not my job. It's not my thing to worry about. That's why I have agents.
Well, from football to soccer, right now at the World Cup, Panama making its World Cup debut is scoreless at the half with Belgium. And in the NBA, what's the latest with Kawhi Leonard wanting out of San Antonio? Well, there's a post up right now from our own Kurt Heelan at NBCSports.com. The Spurs will not trade Kawhi to any team in the Western Conference. I'm Jeff Biggs. This is NBC Sports Radio.
Radio. It's nothing new. It's been here all along. With free entertainment, news, sports, music, and information. It's not just part of life. It's a part of who we are. You know which station is going to tell you the score of the game, which one is going to give you a laugh in the morning, which one will give you something to sing along with. You know where to turn when the weather gets rough. When something big happens, good or bad, you know where to go. Because radio has been here all along. Radio is part of your community, woven into the fabric of what makes home, home. And now, radio has evolved to move with you with the Next Radio app in your FM-enabled phone. Just plug in your headphones to start experiencing radio in a whole new way while using way less battery and data than streaming apps. Check out the live guide to see and interact with live radio stations. Easily find your favorites, like the one you're listening to right now. And as always, it's totally free. Download the Next Radio app today. Next Radio, live and local, wherever you go.
Hey, it's Steve Harvey here for the Illinois Broadcasters Association, and in a recent survey, the Illinois Emergency Management Agency was asked to name the top 5 items that every Illinois family needs to have in their home's emergency disaster kit. Check out these answers. Water, can't live without it. Number 2, non-perishable food. Well, after all, a man gotta eat, right? Number 3, weather radio, and make sure you got fresh batteries too. Number 4, flashlight. Even more reason to have fresh batteries on hand. Number 5, first aid kit. Look, there's no reason to feud over what items to put in your family's emergency disaster kit. Get the answers and more at ready.illinois.gov. That's ready.illinois.gov.
Sponsored by the Illinois Emergency Management Agency, aired in cooperation with the Illinois Broadcasters Association and this station.
There are a ton of social networking websites, but one stands apart for a very special reason. This one saves lives. It's MatchingDonors.com. MatchingDonors.com links organ donors with people in need of kidney and other transplants. In the U.S., 19 people die each day waiting for an organ transplant, most of them for kidneys. If you've ever considered becoming a living organ donor, or if you have someone in need of an organ transplant, visit MatchingDonors.com. Home of the greatest gift of all, the gift of life. MatchingDonors.com.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
I'm doing well.
Yes.
Good time to start talking about foreign policy.
That's right.
As usual, or
Always
almost as usual. But once again, I would like to visit about Syria, the war that's ongoing. The war. This is Obama's war. He decided in 2011 Assad has to go, and Assad's not leaving. He's stronger than ever. And there were a lot of threats and innuendos over the last week or two, and it looks like some bombing. And the Americans were very thorough. They warned. Assad and the government, don't do this, or you're going to be in big trouble. And actually what they were warning is don't mess around with our allies like the Al-Qaeda. And what's going on there is it looks like a winding down, a wrapping up and getting rid of any Al-Qaeda that's left on the borders. And Assad and his allies are doing a pretty good job, which means Russia and others. And yet our position, the United States position, is we're sort of on the ropes, and we had to come back and say, don't do it. But then they did it. And over the weekend, matter of fact, just shortly, they were warned about this, but just within the last 24 hours, the bombing occurred, and 40 people were killed. And this could be escalation, but again, nobody seems to want to escalate into something big, and there's always some excuses made. So this is still an example of what happens when you go to war for uncertain reasons, and the enemy's uncertain, and there's no end point, and they just linger on and on and on. And once again, as far as we're concerned, in the United States is concerned, it's not a war. It's just a little bit of international police action for us to maintain our empire. So this is not a war, so it's just justified. So in some ways, we talk about peace and say, hey, this is great what's going on in North Korea. That's what we want. At the same time, things seem to be exacerbating in other parts of the world, and even this battle involves Iran, and so it's a mess. But this recent bombing raises a lot of questions.
It does, and there are just a few pockets of Al Qaeda, ISIS presence left in Syria. Ironically, all of those pockets are protected by the U.S., literally inside U.S. protection. But we've been following this for the past week or so, wondering when we might do a show on it. The U.S. continued to warn the Assad government, hey, don't go after this area, southwest Syria, southeast Syria. Don't go after these pockets. This is a deconfliction zone that we've determined. Here's what Heather Nauert said. She's the State Department spokesperson. The U.S. will take firm and appropriate measures in response to Syrian government violations in the area. Well, the area is their own territory. And the deconfliction zone was agreed upon, supposedly, without Syrian government participation. Number one, Syria never agreed to a deconfliction zone. And number two, even if it had, every deconfliction agreement to this point has explicitly stated this does not apply to Al-Qaeda, to ISIS, or any other organization on the U.S. terrorism list. So on two counts, she's totally misleading on this.
Well, let me read what she said to get how explicit she is on this issue. And she said this just this past Thursday when they were starting to threaten, and then they ended up doing what they threatened they would do. On Thursday, U.S. Department spokesman Heather Nauert said, any Syrian government military action against the southwest de-escalation zone risks broadening the conflict. Well, she stood up to that and said, fine. Of course, we don't have any business being there. But then she goes on to say, the United States will take firm and appropriate measures in response to Syrian government violations in the area. You know, they're defending their country and their sovereignty, but there are violations. And then she goes on, Russia is duly responsible as a permanent member of the UN Council. The UN's coming in here. It's to use diplomatic and military influence over the Syrian government to stop attacks and compel the government to cease further military offensive. We request that Russia fulfill its commitment in accordance with UN resolution and the Southwest ceasefire arrangements. And they throw it back on the left. It's all Russia's fault. And it's something that is a gross distortion, as you were pointing out, of what's really going on.
Well, what she refers to is the so-called Da Nang agreement, where Trump and Putin met on the sidelines of the conference there in Vietnam, and supposedly, in her telling, agreed to this de-escalation zone. But I was suspicious about this, so I went back and I read the original joint statement of Trump and Putin. And she is absolutely misinterpreting not just the spirit, but the letter of that statement. She claims that this agreement means that the Syrian government forces cannot attack remaining areas of al-Qaeda and ISIS in Syria. But that's not what the statement said at all. Here's what it said, Dr. Paul. The very first sentence of the agreement, Putin and Trump, quote, confirmed their determination to defeat ISIS in Syria. That's exactly what the statement started out with, and that's exactly what the Syrian government's doing. Later on in the statement, quote, the presidents affirmed their commitment to Syria's sovereignty, unity, independence, territorial integrity, and non-sectarian character. That sounds like everything the U.S. has been fighting against. And finally, they talked about the Putin-Trump agreement in November, confirmed the importance of de-escalation zones as an interim step to reduce violence in Syria. Once again, though, al-Qaeda and ISIS never part of any deconfliction agreement.
Yeah, and you know, the real hypocrisy comes in our justification. We're there, you know, to fight for our Constitution, fight for our liberties, and get rid of al-Qaeda because al-Qaeda is the threat. But there's no evidence that we ever did anything. Al-Qaeda's losing, but it was in spite of us. There's no evidence that we did much. It was the Russians and Assad that has brought it to this point of just about ready to eliminate all influence of Al-Qaeda. But it's difficult for us and others who want to get as much truth out as possible for people to hear this, because every time you hear a report on this, it's always, you know, Russia did it, you know, and it was a Russia blame. But, you know, I want to just mention a minute about this justification, because somebody might come and say, how come you guys can argue that we shouldn't be involved there and we should start away? Well, but Russia is there. But there's a big difference between this. First off, our government has no authority to be there. Another thing is 6,000 miles away from home. There's no threat to our security, our Constitution, or our liberties. And we weren't invited to be in there, yet we're in there. Everybody knows we've been there for a long time. But on the other hand, it's close to Russia. Russia has a base there. They were invited in, and Russia was fighting al-Qaeda. And yet that information never gets out, because nobody in this country wants to believe that we ever compromised ourselves on not fighting al-Qaeda. But that's the monster out there that justifies all this military activities and why we have to continue spending more and more money to make us safe. Exactly the same argument they used in the war against Hussein, you know, in Iraq.
Exactly. And anyone who knows what you've done for the past few decades would know that if the thing was turned around and if Syria was our ally and they were begging us to come in and help them, you and I would be sitting here opposing it, saying, doesn't matter if we have permission, we've got no business fighting their battle for them, shouldn't be involved. So it's regardless of that.
Right, and it is an understanding of what foreign policy should be and not, and we should be, non-interventionists. We shouldn't be over there. We would be safer and freer and richer, but no, this is part of the empire. And they act in behalf of the empire. What is confusing is with this administration, it's sometimes we can cheer the administration on who seems to understand that and that we should work for peace, and at other times it seems to be this escalation. And the same way, it's a determined effort because Iran is involved in this because Iran is very sympathetic, but I think there was a claim they just sent 80,000 troops into Syria, which I think is not true. But wasn't there a little bit of question, even though the bombing occurred, we threatened them, it happened, but the guilty party, the one who actually sent the bomb, there's a little uncertainty there, but it was certainly, since we did all the threatening, it had to be our effort, but some people argue, well, maybe Israel was, involved in this. But that would stretch the point because it's a little bit further away than how Israel justifies their involvement there, because they argue that they're mainly concerned about the borders near the Golan Heights, which gives them a little bit more moral authority than to go all the way off to the east.
Well, the latest numbers that I've seen, and this was in the Iranian press, is that 52 people have died in the attack. It happened this morning, Syrian time. And also, this is something else interesting, it included Iraqi military troops. So if it was the U.S., we'd actually be bombing our allied troops, the Iraqis, the people that we put into power, ironically. But the Pentagon has denied it, which makes me suspect it's probably true that we did it. But as you point out, we've been threatening for a couple of weeks. The Syrian government continues to move troops and equipment toward that area to liberate it. They've said they're going to liberate it, and then you have an attack against those troops there. So, yeah, it's probably either the U.S. or the Israelis. I mean, who else could it be?
One of the justifications from the neocons is, well, this guy's a monster. He gasses his own people. He's a vicious dictator, and we have to take care of him. At the same time, we have talked to dictators for a long time. Chinese dictators, Soviet dictators, Korean dictators. Yeah. So it has nothing to do with dictators. For decades, we were friends with Saddam Hussein. He was a dictator, but all of a sudden conditions changed and we became his arch enemy and we got rid of him. So it has nothing to do with this attitude trying to get the moral high ground by saying, oh, well, we're stopping some evil monster from killing all his own people. But it goes on incessantly, and I think most Americans, just turn a blind ear to that. They don't listen to it. They don't care about it. It doesn't affect them. And others say, well, that's probably true. We have to believe them. And then there's a few that pay attention to what we're doing and others like us, because we're by far not the only ones who talk about non-intervention. Matter of fact, this is one thing that we should be a little bit excited about. There are more and more groups now speaking out. It's just that we don't get on the evening news and we get to talk to a broader audience. The establishment gets to control that. But in spite of the shortcomings of what happens on the internet and social news networks, we still are able to get a message out. And I think this is so much better than it was when there were only 3 TV stations.
Although they are trying to shut us down and silence us. But it's interesting you mentioned this whole idea that that these irrational dictator. We can't talk to them, can't do anything. It's always a propaganda tool that they use. Saddam Hussein, Kim Jong-un, they're all irrational dictators. We don't dare talk to them. And it's to convince us that we should only use force. But, think about Assad. If he really was a totally irrational, crazed dictator, maybe he would have actually allied with ISIS and Al-Qaeda and just blew up the whole region, attacked Israel, done all these things. If anything, he's acted in a very careful way, in really objectively what is in his own national interest, which is to get rid of these foreign invaders, foreign-backed invaders. So if looking at it objectively, he's acted like a really irrational actor.
Yeah, I just wonder whether or not they might not have a subtle endorsement of the Monroe Doctrine, which was established early in our history. But, in a way, that's what it is. It's his territory. When the issue came up with Ukraine and Crimea, it was, from his viewpoint, he wasn't acting like a Soviet invasion army invading Poland. And yet right now they're talking about us sending more Marines to Norway to protect Norway against the coming invasion by Russia. I mean, how absurd could that possibly be true? What are the odds of that happening? It seems pretty slim.
Like, what's Russia going to do? Hey, we got Norway. Yeah. What happens next? What happens on day 2?
But the whole thing is I didn't even know how many Marines we already had there. So now we're sending more Marines there. But it's all propaganda to paint the Russians as bad people. But did you see what we did this week, which I think is interesting, because we want trade and dependency on each other, and our space program depends on the rockets from Russia. And we just received some rockets from Russia, and they got some money from us. So at the same time, you almost think that they're playing us for fools. And instead of trying to get people to think, in terms of what would it be like to have a non-interventionist foreign policy designed to protect the safety and security of the United States and be concerned about the Constitution and civil liberties here at home, because we do know that under all wars, the more legitimate wars, so-called, versus these illegitimate wars, civil liberties are always threatened. The reason why we're under the greatest amount of threat right now is we're in perpetual war. And they said the global war on terrorism is forever. And that's why they don't want to ever see the terrorists defeated. But it's because there's a global war on terrorism, we still have to put up with the TSA, at the airport, and the NSA, and all the things going on, because we're in perpetual war and we have to protect the liberties against the invaders. What we need is a better understanding to protect ourselves against the invader or the threat to our liberties by our own government. But if you say that, you're not a very nice person. But truth should be acceptable. If they want to refute that, they should refute, the greatness of the Patriot Act. Why you should be endorsing that, and why I should change my mind. I shouldn't have voted against it, because that's what a true patriot would do.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I just got back from Washington, and I can tell you there's lots of money in having enemies. As you're driving along, going toward the National Airport, there's a big new Boeing building, that looms over you. But you mentioned that, our ability to get the message out in the social media, and we have some challenges. We've been talking about some of those challenges and some of the crackdowns, and a lot of it's being done with government money. I just sent out an update to our subscribers about how U.S. government-funded think tanks are trying to silence the social media that opposes U.S. foreign policy, and that's us. But again, at the risk of saying it once again, that's why we're meeting in August, and we would like to see all of you there. We're putting together a great, great program August 18th in Washington, D.C., taking the fight to so-called enemy territory.
There you go. And I want to thank our audience for joining with us today. And I want to once again emphasize the importance of this issue that we talk about here on our program, and what Daniel does on the RPI Institute website. And it's to get the information out, because I'm a true believer that education is the solution to this, whether it's economic or foreign policy. That you can't say all we need is a couple new people in Washington, different politicians with better management skills. That's not the answer. We have to change people's minds and attitudes and the hearts of people to understand why free markets are better than the kind of markets that we have, that sound money is better than fiat money, that national sovereignty designed to protect liberty is much better than an empire. All these things can be done by explaining the issues to the people, and it's an understanding. That's why I think education is important, and we design that, and that is why we have the conferences, and I think that's where we're making our progress, because certainly, in spite of all the shortcomings that we talk about, it is so different than when I first got involved in politics back in the 70s. There's a better understanding of the federal Reserve System. There's a better understanding about the nature of our government. There's more skepticism of our government, and we complain that the propagandists have total control, but not quite so. There's a lot of people now, a lot more people now who question what our government's doing. So there's signs out there for us to be optimistic, and I hope we can participate in promoting those viewpoints. I do want to thank everybody for joining us today with the Liberty Report, and please come back soon.
Do you or a loved one have a chronic condition such as diabetes, a heart condition, or asthma? Do you or a loved one have a severe allergy to a certain food, drug, or insect? If you answer yes to any of these questions, you are a candidate for an electronic medical alert watch, the alternative to the traditional medical ID bracelet. An electronic medical alert watch visibly communicates a person's health conditions, drug, food, and other allergies, and other critical information to help make a diagnosis and save a life. Take control of your health. Protect yourself or your loved ones and order an electronic medical alert watch today. Visit www.epill.com. That's epill.com. Affordable, free shipping, and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Remember, www.epill.com. That's epill.com. ePill.